every angle. This is Arise America.
We begin now. The U.S. government workers received emails asking them to list their accomplishments from the past week or resign, the latest development in the Trump administration's efforts targeting the federal workforce. The email came after billionaire Trump confidant Elon Musk tweeted that employees would shortly receive an email requesting to understand what they got done last week. He said failure to respond will be taken as a resignation. Musk has been leading an outside effort to aggressively curtail government spending through funding cuts and firings. The email arrived in inboxes shortly after Trump spoke at the Conservative Political Action Conference. The messages came with a subject line, "What did you do last week?" from a sender listed as HR. Well, U.S. President Donald Trump has called on billionaire Elon Musk to take a more aggressive approach to reducing the federal government despite controversy over layoffs and deep spending cuts. Trump said on his Truth Social platform that Elon is doing a great job, but he wants him to be even more aggressive. Trump wrote in all caps again, he wrote, "Remember, we have a country to save and ultimately to make greater than ever before. MAGA." End of quote. Well, President Donald Trump engaged in a heated exchange with Maine Governor Janet Mills over his executive order banning transgender women from competing in women's sports. Mills had previously stated that Maine would follow only federal and state laws on the issue, prompting a forceful response from Trump, who asserted his authority and made it clear that non-compliance would come at a cost. During the confrontation, Trump warned that Maine could also lose federal funding if it refused to enforce the ban. When Mills suggested the matter could be settled in court, Trump dismissed the legal challenge, expressing confidence that he would prevail. He also cast doubt on Mills' political future, implying that he or her stance on the issue could cost her re-election.
2 weeks ago, I signed an executive order banning men from playing in women's sports. Many Democrats are fighting me on that. I hope you continue, because you'll never win another race. And it's just crazy. The NCAA has complied immediately, by the way. That's good. But I understand Maine. Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Well, not here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal laws.
We are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it, because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply, because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state. Good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor, because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Well, here is Angela Fobbs from Germany joining us to discuss DOGE, Elon Musk's run company authorized by President Donald Trump to ensure government spending costs. Good to have you join us, Angela Fobbs. What is your assessment, first of all, of the introduction of DOGE by President Donald Trump through Elon Musk?
Good evening. This has been a month of mayhem. DOGE is not an official government department. That would have to be established by an act of Congress. DOGE is firing needed employees and getting rid of important functions of our government. We as Americans are not safe as long as they are dismantling our government. No one elected Elon Musk, and he doesn't care about the American people or our future. They fired 300 people from the Nuclear Safety Administration without knowing or thinking about the importance of their jobs. And honestly, we could save a lot of money by getting rid of the $18 billion of subsidies that Tesla and SpaceX are receiving.
So when you say Elon Musk does not mean well for Americans, what do you mean? How do you know that he doesn't mean well? And it sounds like there's a lack of trust there with, how Trump is handling the issue of federal spending.
Well, Elon Musk is dismantling our government and eliminating services and protections for the American people without any concern for the short or long-term effects on our nation. The consequences of these activities will soon become evident, And many of the agencies that Musk is attacking have an open investigation on his companies. The way he's handling the whole situation with just randomly firing people, or just what came up in the beginning of this segment about him sending an email to everyone saying, "What have you done?" He doesn't know what the government does.
So, but what are your biggest concerns with Elon's, the DOGE? What dangers are there that you fear that could possibly come as a result of this? I know that the other time we were meant to talk about, access to some of the federal documents, which many Americans or so many Democrats were against. What's the biggest danger that you see, coming out of this?
I think the biggest danger is that our government is actually, it seems large, but for the size of our population, it's actually quite slim. And they do a lot of needed and important functions. And without them, right now, nothing too bad is happening, although there are several epidemics of viruses going around in the United States. But there could be something that happens and we don't have these people anymore.
So, but, from what it looks like, from the outside world, it seems like, so there might be ghost walkers. There are people who the U.S. government is paying and probably might not be existent. So how do you expect the government to cut down costs? There are some people, federal workers, who might be non-existent and, monies might be going into pockets that you do not expect to go into. So how do you expect the U.S. governments to deal with this? And isn't that accountability, as per you have an HR who asks, what did you do or accomplish last week? Do you see it from that perspective?
Well, that assumes that people aren't doing their jobs. It also assumes that our government is our employees in the government are all not working. I would say if you wanted to look for fat in our government, you might check some of our contracts, especially the ones like Tesla or any other contract, large scale contract. I wouldn't say that it was the people working employed as civil servants. They've all taken an oath. They've swore the same oath to the Constitution that the president swore. And so I don't believe that this is a major problem.
Okay, so how do you streamline then between those who are actually working and those that are not working? We know the president has time and time again said that this is to cut federal spending. Should this be a problem if the president is trying to work to ensure that, monies are, there's accountability when it comes to, spending?
Well, that goes from the assumption that Donald Trump is telling the truth, which I don't believe that he is. Our deficit, our government spending, was the highest during his first term. And over President Biden's term, he significantly reduced the deficit. He's looking to reduce things like Social Security and lunch for children and housing and other veteran services and other things that the American people need.
So, but it would be nice to see how one can suggest, as a Democrat, ways in which federal government can reduce government spending. Are they, options that you think that the U.S. government can use to approach such matters?
I think that it would require study, and it would require careful study and examination of what is actually happening. What functions are people doing? Where can we make things more efficient? But that requires someone to sit down, look at what's going on, and try to figure out ways to make it better, as opposed to just randomly firing people because you want to save money. Because I don't believe this will save money in the long run. I think it will just make everything a little bit worse for the average American citizen.
So your concern basically is the process in which the Trump administration is using to cut federal spending, and not necessarily federal spending itself.
I think that the idea of cutting federal spending is a little bit overblown. Our deficit isn't that great. Our annual budget is $6.75 trillion, and we only have a $1.83 trillion deficit. That deficit would not be there if the wealthy and corporations paid their taxes.
So the U.S. is owing in trillions. I'm sure you already know about that they're owing in debt. And according to the president, he's trying to offset the debts. This should be for the benefit of Americans. This is what so many Republicans are saying. But for you, obviously, the issue here is a lot of people will lose their jobs. But if you're doing your job, you wouldn't lose the job.
That's not true. That's absolutely not true. He's fired a lot of people that have had very important jobs in veteran services, in the nuclear agencies. There are millions of functions within the government, and the government is there to do the functions because they can't be done by the private sector. So it's not just firing people, it's what services that people are paying taxes for do they need?
So, but what other issue is of concern to you as a Democrat that you want to put out there? And probably just not necessarily, because oftentimes when you talk in the media or on TV about such issues, we have people pointing to the issues. But when are we going to profess solutions? What way can you advise, Republicans or the Republican president to go about his administration?
I would say that he needs to stick to his constitutional duties. And one of those is not deciding what the budget is. That's a job for the Congress. I would suggest that he listen to his constituents. Many Republican constituents are also concerned about these cuts and the cuts of funding and programs also.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Angela Fobbs, for joining us to talk about the DOGE, Elon Musk's run company authorized by President Donald Trump. Really appreciate you for the time.
Every angle. This is Arise America.